to give you some background, I'm a Cork girl, a young married mum, and I'm a stay-at-home mum at the moment, but previous to that, for about 7 years, I was managing director of a large multinational. And prior to that, then I worked in New York with the Innocence Project in 2002 for about 6 months. And I worked, the Innocence Project is a pro bono clinic, and they help exonerate innocent individuals. And there's about 900 exonerees alone in the US. And it was during that time that I came across a case called Walter Swift. And Walter was incarcerated at that time for 21 years for a rape he didn't commit, African American, down in Jackson in Detroit. So I uncovered, I suppose, the pieces of evidence that led to his ultimate exoneration. And at the end of the 6-month period, though, I couldn't leave it go. And I came back to Ireland, and I drove everyone crazy talking about this case and the Innocence Project. And I think people really thought it was in my imagination. And I continued to pursue it. And then, thankfully, in 2008, May 2008, after campaigning and continued to campaign for Walter, he walked free as a 47-year-old man. And he, it was quite an emotional event and quite life-changing, but on the courthouse steps, actually that was called Frank Murphy, of all the names, but Frank Murphy Hall of Justice, Walter stood to the crowd and he said that he felt like a bird left out of a cage. And a lot of people asked me, you know, afterwards, a lot of media and that, and interviews that I had done, you know, why did you pursue it for so long, and what was it? And I thought it was, you know, this was a poor man, there'd been great injustice, and I wanted to do something, you know, to help him. But it wasn't until 2010 when things fell quite apart for myself that I began to reflect on that question, and I suppose I had a major aha moments. In 2010, and for a number of years, I had been running at 1 million miles an hour, smugly thinking I could juggle it all, the young family, working really hard, traveling all over the world, and successful as I thought, on paper, just on paper. And it all kind of came crashing down, and suddenly I was burnt out, completely exhausted, and not able to sleep, or think, or write, or do anything. And it was around that time that Walter actually came to Ireland, and he hadn't been doing very well either, and I was feeling huge responsibility and huge guilt, and wondering, was it really worth getting him out of prison? And because he was broken, completely shattered, alone, and I had saved him on numerous occasions, I think, from suicidal thoughts. And I remember realizing how bad he was one day when I was on the phone to him, and he actually referred to his apartment as a cell. And so Sonny Jacobs and Peter Pringle and myself orchestrated bringing him to Ireland, and I collected him in Dublin. It was quite funny, actually. In immigration up in Dublin, the immigration wouldn't let him through because he told them the story of what happened and who he was going to meet, and they thought he was completely off his game. And it took a number of phone calls, and I got him through. But there we were in Dublin. He actually looked homeless. I was quite broken, and the two of us got into the car and made our way to Connemara, to Sonny and Peter's. And it was on that journey, we both realized how much we had so much in common. Even though our lives were so different, there was a connection. I suppose I realized that I had been running. He had been running from the trauma of what he endured, and his vice was drugs. My vice had been work, and to block the pain. And I began to realize that I'd been running from a lot of emotional baggage in my life. My father had committed suicide in 2004, and my mother had died just 6 weeks before Walter came out in 2008, and they were both in their 50s. So that trauma and that pain, I had distracted myself to not deal with it. And I began to realize that I was connecting with Walter had felt abandoned in prison, and I suppose I, in a way, had felt quite abandoned. So ironically, it's Walter I have to be thankful for, because while I physically enabled him to be free, he spiritually freed me and allowed me to figure out my gig and the lies and that I'd been telling myself. And as Father Richard talked about, I began to realize that I needed to take time and to sit and to be quiet and maybe reflect on maybe things that were more important than the job and the status and all of that. But I've also seen how beautiful things can come out of bad things. And Sonny and Peter and myself now are in a place that we're beginning to carve out a program to help other exonerees, and out of bearing witness to Walter's pain and my own pain and all of our pain, I suppose we're seeing how maybe we can actually help other exonerees, and also look at maybe employing marginalised individuals that have been marginalised by our society. So thanks very much, and thanks for your time.